Welcome to Shomach Shova and the Daf Shir sponsored Lilu Nishvas Armi Akashom Ve'Abbas Yitzchok. We're holding Basra Daf Samech Beis. The Gemara Mudalef brings that Rav said that if a seller wrote the borders of a field and he wrote a long border across from a short border, so then you go based on the short border. So I asked Rav Kahan and Rav Asi to Rav, why? Just go an angle from the long border to the short border. Says the Gemara, Shosik Rav. Rav was silent and did not answer. The Ramami Pano, in the end of his Sefer Yoines Elam, he brings that whenever it says that Rav was silent, it's upshot that Rav did not have an answer. Rav did have an answer, but Rav's answer was based on Kabbalah. He brings, we mentioned here earlier in this Psak, that Rav is Rav Abo, that's mentioned in Sefer HaZohar. He was a Talmid of Shirin Bar Yochai. He was a big Mekubal, one of the big Mekubalim of that generation. And he learned many inyonim that have to do in Shas based on Kabbalah. So many times he had an explanation based on Kabbalah, but Rav was choising, he was silent, he didn't explain it based on Kabbalah, so therefore he was quiet. The Ramai Pana goes on to say that that's why many times we get a Pasken like Rav, even though Rav Shosik, because he had a reason based on Kabbalah. And one of the examples that he brings is our Gemara over here, and he explains it, Al Pi Kabbalah, what did Rav mean? So the Chavas Yair in Simon Kufran base, that the famous tshuva where he goes on to explain what's shot, that sometimes the Amoraim seem to speak now respectfully to each other. So within the words over there, he brings this Yoines Elam, and he says that even though we found in Shas that sometimes Shas Rav, when we pasken like him, he says he gufa is the reason. We don't pasken halacha based on Kabbalah. So because we don't pasken halacha based on Kabbalah, if we don't have a halachic reason to pasken like Rav, if the only reason the Rav is shoisik and the reasoning of Rav is based on Kabbalah, we're not going to pasken like him. And the Sefer Im Rabino, and the Akadam and Heor Ravov, we mentioned this in Rabino regarding a different shir in Bava Metzia, says the Im Rabino that the Rabbi and Pano, that's what he meant as well. That's exactly what he means. You never go based on Kabbalah. But sometimes you want to know, you know what Rav's reasoning is? He has Kabbalistic reasons why he said something. That doesn't mean that we pass in that way. But it just gives you another understanding, another pan, another deher explanation in Rav's Shita. And it's interesting to mention, now that we mention this concept, they don't pass halacha based on Kabbalah. The Chassid Sofer in Shuv and Archaim in the end of Simon Nun Aleph, he says a very stark lashon. He says, "Kol ha'ma'arev divrei Kabbalah im ha'halachas ha'psukes chayev mishum zoreya kilayim." That's what he brings, and then he goes on to say other things that people mix maybe divrei Torah or divrei which not Torah. But he says that if you put halacha with Kabbalah, it's considered to be kilayim. In the Tshuvas Minchas Elazar, Chalak Beis Simin Ein Ches Ois Dalet, he brings the Chassid Sofer and says, it's very strange to say such a thing, because if you open Shulchan Aruch, you open the Magen Avraham, many times they bring Divrei HaZoyar, they bring the Divrei HaRizal, and they pass halacha based on that. So how can the Chassid Sofer say it's called kilayim to put Kabbalah in here? Maybe you don't rely only on Kabbalah when you have halachic source, but to come and say it's kilayim, it's very hard to say. And he says the Chassid Sofer did not mean to say what he said. The only reason he said that lashon is because of the hemshech, when he speaks about combining Torah with no Torah. But in Kabbalah, of course, there is what to follow Kabbalah. Just if you have a halachic source, you don't follow Kabbalah. But he says if you have a machloikis apoiskim and you don't know how to be machriya, so you will rely on Kabbalah to be machriya the halacha. And in the Shut with the Baz, in Chelik Dalet, he brings a few nekudas regarding this in the different shuvas. And he says that the rules that we say regarding Pasken on Al Pi Kabbalah go as follows. When there's a machlekes, so divrei Kabbalah can be machriya. He speaks about putting on tefillin, chol hamoed. So the machlekes a place you should do it or not. Al Pi Kabbalah you don't do it, so don't put on tefillin, chol hamoed. And then he brings that if you have a machlokes between halacha and Kabbalah, you've had a pasken like halacha, not like Kabbalah. But if you have a source of Kabbalah that's not mentioned in the Gemara, there's no other source except Kabbalah, of course you can follow Kabbalah. His big theory regarding this idea that you remove tefillin before Musaf on Rosh Chodesh. Says the source to it is Divrei Kabbalah. But I don't have any other source of the Gemara that says otherwise. So therefore I can rely on Kabbalah. And going back to what we start with, when I have a problem with what Rav says, and it's a halachic question on Rav, even though Rav has an answer be Kabbalah, Vada Yigol according to halacha. But if there's no problem pi halacha, even though Rav is relying on Kabbalah, if I don't have any issue pi halacha, of course I'll rely on Kabbalah. Kabbalah can always come in to be machriya or to tell me what to do if it does not contradict any halacha. This is obviously a big sugya on its own. We just touched a little bit upon it to understand the sugya. How can we rely on Kabbalah to Pasken halacha? Anyone who wants to join the Shomachshava email list to WhatsApp group, please email shomachshava@gmail.com.